Hi, I'm Cris, and this is a very special overview because I actually designed the ocarina I'll be talking about today. I designed the shape of the aria to suit my personal preferences for ergonomics, breath slope, and sound, and STL was kind enough to produce it. My intention for the aria is to be an instrument that is ideal for recording and performing as a soloist, something with a stylish aesthetic that is also functional and very comfortable to play. The aria tenor, also known as an alto C or AC ocarina, is fully chromatic and plays from A4 to F6, giving it a range of 1 octave plus 5 for a total of 13 notes. Here's the scale, played with and without a bending technique that improves the high notes. The aria is about 8 inches long, and it's about 4 inches wide. It weighs about 9.5 ounces, which is just about the same as my Nintendo 3DS. Here they are next to each other for a better size comparison. The aria is a transverse ocarina, and I designed the shape to fit very comfortably in the hands. The tail of the ocarina is elongated and curved so that you can very easily, very comfortably support the ocarina on the highest notes without having to hold it in an awkward position or accidentally cover any of the finger holes. The mouthpiece is also very slightly angled, which takes some strain off of the wrist and allows for more comfortable playing because your hands can remain in a more natural position. This is actually a characteristic that I don't personally prefer in a lot of my ocarinas because it isn't ideal for the technique and the hand position that I like to use for playing the highest notes. And you can see in an early prototype of the aria that the mouthpiece is a little bit more of a right angle with the body of the ocarina. However, a lot of ocarina players prefer a more angled mouthpiece, and I also think that the slight angle works better with the look of the ocarina. It has a nicer aesthetic to it, and it's still suitable for the technique that I like to use because it's only a very slight angle, and this way it can accommodate both preferences, and I think it looks better too. The texture of the aria depends on which color you choose. This is the matte black one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the texture better. As you can see, it has a natural clay finish and has a very nice earthy aesthetic and a very grippy feel, which makes the sub-hole playability very good. Depending on which one you get, there may be a little bit of straw firing, but for the most part it's solid black. And the green and black one is pretty different. The green and black one is a glazed ocarina, but what I think is interesting is that the green striped areas have a very glossy, shiny, kind of a crackle finish, but the darker areas, while they are still glazed, have a slight texture to it, so it's a little bit more of a matte finish than the green striping. And show you the back of the ocarina, you can see that there's slight texture, so it's kind of a combination of matte and glazing finish, which kind of reminds me of fancy pottery art, so it's pretty cool. The aria is a comfortable fit for most hand sizes, but if you have very small hands or short fingers, you may prefer an ocarina that has a more round shape or more closely placed subholes. In my opinion, there are already many ocarinas in the market that are very comfortable for people that have small hands, but I wanted to create an ocarina that would be very comfortable for medium to large size hands, and especially long fingers, so I have the subholes placed where I think that they would be more comfortable for longer fingers. The aria has a breath slope and volume that I feel are ideal for solo performance. The breath requirements are somewhat dynamic with a gently rising breath slope, so you will need to reduce your breath slightly to play the lowest notes, and the highest notes will require a little bit of extra breath to sound clear. Because of this, the aria is a great ocarina for developing better breath control. With time and practice, it has the potential to be played more expressively than a less dynamic ocarina. I think the aria is a good choice for a beginner to intermediate player. while the breath slope is a bit more difficult than other beginner ocarinas. I think the overall design of the aria makes it very suitable for someone who wants an ocarina that will grow with them as a player. Previous woodwind experience is definitely a plus, but I think a motivated beginner would do very well with the aria ocarina, especially since the ergonomics are designed to reinforce good playing technique. The aria has a full, rich tone with a crisp attack. The tone is responsive enough to play fast music, but it's balanced enough to sound really nice for slow, more melodic playing as well. The longer mouthpiece is part of the design which improves the tone by giving it a more stable timbre, which makes it very versatile for playing a lot of different styles of music. Alright, so let's talk about playing technique, how to play those high notes without dropping the ocarina. And for me, this is the fun part because I get to explain a little bit about what I was thinking when I designed the ocarina and how the playability fits into things. So basically, when you are starting out playing your ocarina, your hands will be in this position because when you're playing the lowest notes, you need to be able to access those subholes quickly. But as you get to the higher notes, you've got less fingers covering the holes, and the ocarina doesn't feel quite as stable in your hands anymore because only your left pinky and your right thumbs are covering the holes for high C6. And by that point, your ocarina is starting to feel a lot less stable in your hands. So let's talk about how to play those high notes successfully and easily. And I recommend sitting on a soft surface such as a couch or a bed, or using your neck strap while you're practicing this technique, because until you get comfortable with it, there is a risk that you could drop your ocarina, and you don't want to do that. So find a comfy place where you're not going to risk dropping your ocarina, and then we'll continue. So basically, when you get up to high C, you'll want to modify your hand position a little bit so that your right pinky and right ring finger are grasping the tail of the ocarina, and use your finger to kind of find that groove on the front of the ocarina and use that as kind of a tactile reference point, because you'll want to be grasping the tail of the ocarina kind of in that groove, not only because it's comfortable, but because it keeps you from blocking that finger hole that your pinky was covering. And then look on the back side of the ocarina. Make sure that when you're gripping the tail of the ocarina, that your right thumb is flat and it's very comfortably resting over the right thumb hole on the padded part of your thumb where it makes a good seal. And hand shape will affect this slightly. If you have very short fingers, you may need to choke up on the grip a little bit. If you have longer fingers, then you'll want to be gripping closer to the tail of the ocarina so that your thumb is able to be flat and it's not bent or in a funny position. So find where that is for you, where it's most comfortable, and then look back on the front of the ocarina and just rest your pinky and ring finger where it's comfortable for your right thumb as well. And you can either grip it tightly like this, or you can kind of leave those fingers flat with the tail of the ocarina kind of pressing into your palm or the side of your hand there. So whichever is more comfortable for you, either way is correct. All right, so now you are holding the ocarina correctly to continue on to the highest notes. And as your left thumb comes up for high D, you'll notice that already the ocarina feels a lot more stable in your hands. And most of the weight is actually going to be resting on your right hand. If you completely remove your left hand out of the equation, you'll see that it's actually pretty stable just in your right hand because of the way you're gripping it. But just to give it a little bit of extra stability, when that left thumb comes up, you're going to want to move it either to the side of the finger hole or to the side of the ocarina, just to create some extra stability. So I'd say about 80 or 90% of the weight is going to be supported on your right hand, with your left hand just giving it a tiny bit of extra support. And so in this position, you can very easily lift up your right thumb for E and your left pinky for F, and depending on what you're trying to play, sometimes those can be difficult transitions, especially if you're transitioning from a lower note up to high E or F. But if you get into a good habit of practicing making the transition from this hand position to the modified hand position, you can make transitions from lower notes to higher notes sound a lot more clean and a lot better. So that is what I recommend. Alright, so the technique that I just finished explaining is ideal for slower, more melodic music. The reason being that when you're playing slower, more melodic music, your hands have a little bit more time to move into a modified position, whereas if you're playing something that's like your hands may not have time to move back and forth between the regular position and the modified position. It could be really frustrating trying to do that, but there is a second way to do it, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But anyway, for the slower, more melodic music, I recommend, since your hands are already going to be in the modified position, I recommend leaning forward. This is a technique sometimes called the acute bend, but it improves the tone quality of the highest notes. And it's not the only way to get a good tone for these notes, but in my opinion, it's a very easy, probably the best way to get a really good tone for these notes. And since your hands are already in this position, it's just a natural progression to also lean forward. And that way you don't need to blow as hard to get a really full, round, clean tone, which is one of the benefits of the technique. But let's say you're playing something really fast, you don't have time to change your hand position back and forth a lot. So let's talk about your alternatives. Because what you can do alternatively is to roll the thumbs off of the thumb holes. And to give yourself a little bit more stability, again, you'll use your pinky and ring finger kind of as a counterbalance along that groove. But instead of gripping it like in the modified hand position, they'll just be kind of laying flat. And that will give you the stability you need to be able to roll the thumbs off of the holes. And this is a technique that really requires a lot of precision. I don't recommend doing it until you've practiced a lot in a way that's safe, either with a neck strap or over a soft surface. It is doable, but it will take a lot of practice, and it requires a pretty high level of coordination to be able to do it. But you can do it with enough practice, and it works very well for faster, more intricate pieces that require you to move up and down between the highest and the lowest notes. So depending on what you're playing, just use the technique that works best for that situation. And you'll find pieces as you learn to play a lot of music that will work better for the first technique, and others that will work better for the second. Oh, by the way, this is the most important part. When you're playing the highest notes, be sure to use plenty of breath. If you don't use enough breath on the highest notes, they're not going to sound right. You're going to be flat, and the ocarina is going to have kind of a weak, airy tone. But if you use the correct amount of breath, the ocarina will have a much rounder, fuller sound. So it may take some time to become familiar with the breath requirements, but make sure you're using plenty of breath on those high notes. For the lowest notes, as I said before, you'll need to slightly reduce your breath to keep from going sharp. I recommend using a good electronic tuner or a free one that you can get on the computer or even on your phone app to help you figure out the correct amount of breath to play each note in tune. Once you become familiar with the breath slope, it will become second nature and you won't need the tuner as much. But then you can practice developing good intonation by playing intervals apart. You can play D, E, and F, the low D, E, and F, and compare it with high D, E, and F to help figure out how much breath to use for the highest notes. And you can similarly use high C, B, and A to practice getting good intonation for the low notes. And that will help teach you not only intonation, but good breath control. Well, that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy the aria, and thanks for watching.